Lesson 13. Sultan Ghiyasuddin in the Qazi's court. Hundreds of years ago, in the eastern province of Bengal, Sultan Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah ruled the land. His capital was Sonargaon. Sultan Ghiyasuddin was a good ruler. He ruled wisely and well. He respected men of learning. He had a deep regard for law. Now, my dear children, in this paragraph, we understand that hundreds of years ago, in a place that is in Bengal and especially in the eastern province of Bengal, there lived a sultan. The sultan's name was Ghiyasuddin Azam Shah, and he ruled the land. He ruled that place. Now, the capital of that place was Sonargaon. And this sultan was a very good ruler, good man. He was a wise man. And he respected people who were learned. And he also had great regard for law. That is, he would love to follow the law. Now, what happened? Next paragraph. One day, while the sultan was practicing with his bow and arrows, he accidentally wounded the only son of a poor widow. The wounded boy did not survive. Weeping and wailing, the poor widow went to the Qazi and told him what had happened. Now, when Sultan was practicing with his bow and arrow, what happened? By mistake, accidentally means without any intention. By mistake, he wounded the boy. Now, who was the boy? He was the only son of a poor widow. Now, this poor widow had no one except her son. And the sultan, by mistake, hurt the son of this poor widow. And he was wounded. He got hurt. And he did not survive. He lost his life. Now, when this happened, the poor widow started weeping, crying, and wailing. What is the meaning of the word wailing? Wailing means to cry loudly for a long time. And now the poor widow went to the Qazi and told him all that had happened. The next paragraph. The Qazi was an honest and upright man. He sent an officer to summon the Sultan to his court. When the officer reached the palace, the guards stopped him and inquired about his business. When they learned that he had come to serve a summons on the Sultan, they were shocked. They refused to let him go inside the palace. Now the Qazi heard everything that the poor widow told him, and he sent a summon. Now the Qazi was an honest man. He was an upright man. And so he did not get scared that the summon had to be sent to the Sultan. So he sent one of his officers with a summon. Summon is to ask someone to come before the court. So the summon was sent with the officer, and the officer went to the Sultan's court. Now when the officer went to the Sultan's palace, the guards stopped him. They said, "Hey, why have you come here? Stop. What is the business?" They inquired. Inquired means asked, found out. And about his business means about what work he had come with. Now when this officer told the guards that he came with the summons on the Sultan, summons means a written notice asking a person to come to the court. Now on hearing this, the guards were shocked and they did not allow him inside the palace. The next paragraph. The officer was now in a fix. The guards did not allow him to enter the palace, but he knew that he could not return without serving the summons. The Qazi would not take him back. He had to find a way of reaching the Sultan somehow. What could he do? He thought and thought. Now here the officer was not allowed inside the palace by the guards. He was in a fix. Fix means now in a difficult situation. He did not know what to do, because if he did not give the summons to the Sultan, he would not be able to stand in front of the Qazi. So now he had to think about a plan. How will I give the summons to the Sultan? So he thought and kept on thinking for some time. Now what did he do? At last he began to sound the azan, the call for the prayer, loudly just outside the palace. It was not yet time for the prayer. When the Sultan heard the loud, untimely call, he was greatly surprised. He ordered that the man giving the call should be brought before him immediately. Now what happened? The officer thought and he came up with a plan. He started the sound of azan. Now what is azan? Azan is a call for prayer. And he made a loud noise standing outside the palace. And it was not time for prayer. And so the Sultan heard this loud noise and he said, it is not time for azan, and who is making this loud noise? And he was surprised and he ordered the guards to bring this person, whoever he is, immediately inside. Now we see the next paragraph. His soldiers rushed out of the palace gates, caught the officer and took him to the Sultan within moments. When the officer knelt before the Sultan, he was trembling with fear. But he mustered all his courage and explained why he had given the call for azan. Then, with shaking hands, he gave the summons to the Sultan. Sultan Ghiyasuddin took it without making any comment. He read the summons and told the officer to go back to the Qazi. He announced that he would appear in the Qazi's court the next day. Now here, in this paragraph, we learn that the soldiers had to leave the officer inside the palace because the king, that is the Sultan, has ordered the soldiers to rush and get him inside. And so this was a wonderful chance for the officer to enter into the palace. Now he started getting scared because all the soldiers have come to take him inside. And so when he reached inside the palace in front of the Sultan, he knelt. The officer knelt before the Sultan. And he was trembling means shivering with fear. But he took courage. Mustered means somehow took courage. And he explained it to the Sultan. He said, why did he make the call for azan? Though it was untimely, though it was not time for the prayer. And with shaking hands, he gave the summons to the Sultan. Now you know what is summons. Summons is a written notice asking the Sultan to be present at the court. Now Sultan Ghiyasuddin took it in his hands and he did not comment. Did not comment means he did not say anything. He read the summons and told the officer to go back to the Qazi. And he also told him that he would come, that is, he would appear in Qazi's court the next day. The next paragraph. The next morning, the Sultan got ready to appear before the Qazi. He hid a sharp sword in his robe and set out. The courtroom was packed with people. Everyone was eager to see what would happen. The Qazi entered and took his place on the high seat of honor. In a little while, Sultan Ghiyasuddin entered the courtroom. Everyone stood up to show respect to the Sultan. But the Qazi did not get up. The Sultan stood in the docks and the trial began. The widow presented her complaint. The Qazi took note of all the evidence and in a grave voice addressed the Sultan. Now in this paragraph, what happened? The Sultan already told the officer that he would be present at the court in front of the Qazi. The next morning, the Sultan was there at the court and he had a sharp sword which he hid in his robe. Now, what is a robe? A robe is a long gown and there he kept a sword hidden with him. Now when he went to the courtroom courtroom was packed with people. Everyone there was very eager to see what is going to happen. And the Qazi entered and took the place that is on a high seat of honor. Now, because he is like a judge over there and he's going to judge the situation. So he took the seat of honor. And after some time, in a little while, means after some time, who came in? The Sultan. And he too entered the courtroom. When the Sultan entered, everyone stood up because they respected the Sultan. But the Qazi did not get up because now he held a place of honor. The Sultan stood in the docks. Now what is docks? Docks is a place where it is an enclosed place where the person who has committed some mistake stands in front of the Qazi. Now, and the trial began. Now when the trial began, what happened? The widow told all the complaints she had against the Sultan. And the Qazi took note of it. Means he kept on understanding what is happening and keeping a note, writing it down. And the evidence was given. The widow told everything what happened and in a grave voice addressed the Sultan. Now who is addressing the Sultan? The Qazi. In a grave voice he is addressing the Sultan. Let's see what happens. You are guilty of causing the death of the only son of this poor widow. According to the law, you must pay a fine for this offense. I order you to do that without delay. The Sultan accepted the judgment and apologized to the widow. He arranged to pay the fine immediately. The widow felt satisfied that the offense was brought home to the offender. When the case was over, the Qazi got up from his high seat of honor. Respectfully he bowed to the Sultan and requested him to take his seat. Now what happened? Now the Qazi told the Sultan that he was guilty of causing the death of the only son of the poor widow. He said that he is wrong in doing that act of mistake by killing the son of a poor widow. And so, according to the law, that is according to rules, he has to pay a fine. Offense means a wrong deed. So because of that wrong deed, because of the offense that the Sultan committed, he had to pay fine to the poor widow. That was the order and he said, do it immediately. So the Sultan also accepted it. He said, okay, I will do it. And he apologized. Apologized means he said sorry. And he arranged to pay the money, the fine money, immediately to the widow. And now the widow was very satisfied. She was happy that the offense was brought home to the offender. And offender is a person who commits mistake, who has done something wrong. So now everything was satisfied. The widow was happy with what happened. And now after everything was over, what happened? Now the Qazi got up from his seat of honor and with respect he bowed down before the Sultan because the Sultan is above the Qazi and he needs to respect the Sultan. So he requested him to sit on the seat. Now let's see what happens. The Sultan then drew the hidden sword from his robes and told the Qazi, I am happy that you did not waver in your duty. You did not hesitate to punish me. Otherwise, I would have beheaded you with this sword. Now here, the Sultan is telling the Qazi, he took the sword out and he is telling the Qazi, now I am happy that you did not waver in your duty. What is the meaning of waver? That is, you did not become weak when you made a decision. So he's saying, if you would have wavered, what would I do? I would have taken the sword and cut your head. Beheaded means cutting off the head. But he said, I'm happy that you are very honest and you did your duty properly. Then let's see what happens. The Qazi then put his hand under the cushion where the Sultan was seated and brought out a whip. He said, Your Majesty, I am happy because you obeyed the law. Otherwise, I would have whipped you in this court. The Sultan then got up and embraced the Qazi. Thank God we both did our duty, he said. Everyone present in the courtroom praised the two great men. Now what happened? The Qazi went and below the cushion where the Sultan was sitting, that is below the seat, he took out the whip. Now what is the whip? Whip is a thing which is used to beat the person as a punishment. It is used on people as well as animals. So this Qazi, he took out the whip and he told the Sultan, Your Majesty, I am happy because you obeyed the law. If you did not obey, if you disobeyed, you know what would I do? I would have whipped you in the court. And the Sultan then got up and embraced the Qazi. And he said, Thank God we both did our duty and we are honest. And everyone in the court was happy and they praised these two great men, that is the Qazi and the Sultan. Thank you.